Linya, I need you to cooperate with me on the divorce." Shinmuhan sat at his desk, not even looking up, his tone as flat as if he were giving a routine report. My hand holding the teacup trembled slightly. In my past life, when I heard those words, I had begged him through tears, refusing to sign no matter what. It ended in a mutually destructive struggle, and I was secretly murdered in the hospital. In this life, I simply set down the teacup, stood up, and said, "All right, when do we go?" Shinmuhan finally looked up, a flicker of surprise in his dark pupils. "Aren't you going to ask why? Since you said so, you must have your reasons." I smoothed my dress. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'll be waiting. With that, I walked out of his office without a backward glance. In the corridor, Xiao Zhang was mopping the floor. Seeing me emerge, he immediately snapped to attention and saluted. "Good day, ma'am, Xiao Zhang. Let's drop that form of address from now on." I gave a faint smile. "It won't be appropriate much longer." Xiao Zhang stood frozen in place as I walked away. When I returned home, the housekeeper Zhang Sa was bustling about in the kitchen. Seeing me arrive, she hurried over. "Madam, what would you like for dinner tonight?" "I'll go buy groceries." "Zhang Sa, pack your things and prepare to return to your hometown." I took off my coat. "I'll settle your wages." The rag slipped from Mrs. Zhang's hands. "Madam, have I done something wrong?" "No. I'm the one who's moving out." But it wasn't really moving. It was being forced out with nothing but the clothes on my back. In my past life, I was devoted to Shinmuhan, believing our temporary divorce was just a formality. Like a fool, I signed everything over to him and moved into that cramped tenement alone. Turns out, he'd been scheming with that manipulative Shin Yuqing all along. I was their laughingstock. In this lifetime, I will make them pay. Shinmuhan didn't return home until 11 at night. I had already packed my luggage and was waiting for him on the living room sofa. "Yaya, what's all this?" He frowned at the 2 suitcases in front of me. "I'll move out after the divorce tomorrow, so I won't be a bother." I stood up. "By the way, I don't want any of it, the house, the car, the savings. Consider it my gift to set you free." Shinmuhan's face darkened. "Linya, what's this all about?" "I'm not making a scene." I looked at him, my emotions in turmoil. "Shinmuhan, haven't you always felt that marrying me was a burden? Well, now I'm letting go. You should be pleased." In my past life, he really had thought that I'd overheard him by accident. Back then, it broke my heart. Now, looking back, it just seems ridiculous. When did I ever say that? Shinmuhan took 2 steps closer. "Yaya, let's talk this through properly. There's nothing to discuss." I picked up the suitcase and headed out. "Didn't you want freedom? Starting tomorrow, you'll have it." "Linya," Shinmuhan grabbed my arm. "What's gotten into you? Why are you acting like this all of a sudden?" "Why? Because I've already died once and seen everyone's true colors." I didn't explain, just pulled my hand away from his grasp. "Let go." Shinmuhan stared at me blankly, only releasing his grip after a long pause. I walked out of the home I'd lived in for 3 years without looking back. Downstairs, orderly Xiao Wang was on guard duty. Seeing me dragging my suitcase out, he startled. "Ma'am, where are you going this late? Please don't call me sister-in-law anymore. Starting tomorrow, I won't be." I waved my hand, and a rickshaw emerged from the street corner. 15, Tianjin Road. "Please." The rickshaw puller pedaled through the night, the cool breeze brushing against my face. Suddenly, I felt a sense of relief like never before. No, 15. Tianjin Road was the place I'd prepared long ago, a modest little house. Simple but enough for me to start over. The next morning at 8:50 sharp, I showed up at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Shinmuhan was already waiting there, with his adjutant Li Ming standing beside him. Seeing me, Li Ming immediately came forward. "Ma'am, the general said you didn't come home last night. We were all worried." "Don't worry, I'm fine." I looked at Shinmuhan. His face was pale with dark circles under his eyes, looked like he hadn't slept all night. "Let's go in." I walked ahead toward the Civil Affairs Bureau entrance. The divorce process was straightforward. The clerk asked a few routine questions, and we answered cooperatively. In the end, our 2 red marriage certificates were taken away, replaced by 2 green divorce certificates. Stepping out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sunlight was blinding, and I squinted my eyes. "Yaya, let me take you home," Shinmuhan called out as he caught up. "No need, we're divorced now, there's no point," I replied without looking back. Continuing to walk forward, from behind me came Shinmuhan's voice. "Linya, you'll regret this." I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at him. "Shinmuhan, I won't be the one who regrets this." That afternoon, the entire military compound was buzzing with excitement. news of Commander Shin Muhan's divorce spread like wildfire, with all sorts of rumors flying around. Some said I had an affair. Others claimed I thought Shin Muhan's salary was too low. And there were even whispers that I had mental issues. I paid no attention to any of it, quietly organizing my things in the small bungalow. At 7 in the evening, someone knocked on the door. I opened the door and was surprised to see Shin Muhan's mother, Lu Qingya. Mom, I paused, realizing the slip as soon as the word left my lips. Lu, Auntie Lu. Lu Qingya looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, Yaya, how could you live in a place like this? Come home with me right now. In my past life, this mother-in-law was actually quite good to me. Compared to the cold stares from others, she was the only one who showed me some warmth. But I also knew that the daughter-in-law she was most satisfied with was never me. It was always Shin Yuqing, the girl who grew up with her son. Aunt Lu, Muhan and I are already divorced. You don't need to worry about me, I said politely. What divorce? That was just for Muhan's work. How could you take it seriously? Lu Qingya stamped her foot in frustration. Why are you two so stubborn? For work, I scoffed inwardly. In my past life, Shin Muhan had deceived me the same way, claiming we needed a fake divorce for work reasons and asking me to wait for him. And what happened? I waited until my dying day, and he never came back to me. Aunt Lu, some things are better said out in the open, I said calmly. Muhan and I aren't right for each other. It's better for everyone if we part ways sooner rather than later. Why are you being so stubborn, child? Lu Qingya pushed past me and strode into the room. How can you live in a place like this? Hurry up and pack your things. You're coming back with me. She looked at the humble little hut, tears streaming down her face. My dear daughter-in-law, why are you putting yourself through this? Seeing her tearful expression, a pang of sorrow welled up in my heart. All things considered, this woman has truly been good to me. It's just that she has someone else in mind. Aunt Lu, please don't be upset, I said as I helped her sit down and poured her a glass of water. I'm perfectly fine like this, free and unburdened. What's all this talk about freedom? A woman still needs someone to rely on. Lu Qingya took my hand. Yaya, I know Muhan can be inconsiderate at times, but he truly cares for you. If you two keep fighting like this, you'll only end up hurting yourselves. I withdrew my hand and smiled gently. Aunt Lu, there are some things you wouldn't understand. What do you mean I wouldn't understand? I've been through more in life than you've ever seen. Lu Qingya sighed. Yaya, have you been listening to gossip? Gossip? I looked at her, thinking how wonderful it would be if these were just rumors. Unfortunately, they were all true. After Lu Qingya left, I sat alone in the dimly lit room as memories flooded back like a tidal wave. On this very day in my past life, I was also sitting alone in this room, filled with resentment and bitterness. Back then, I naively believed that if I waited long enough, Shin Muhan would eventually change his mind. Instead, what I ended up waiting for was the news of his engagement to Shin Yuqing. It was the spring of 1976 when I saw the news in the newspaper. Commander Shin Muhan is engaged to Shin Yuqing, daughter of a revolutionary martyr. With the wedding to be held next month, my hands trembled as I held the newspaper, unable to believe my eyes. I later found out that the so-called temporary divorce was just a sham. Shin Muhan had already been involved with Shin Yuqing, but didn't have the nerve to openly divorce me, so he came up with this scheme. The most ironic part was that Shin Yuqing even came to see me specially, pretending to be a caring friend while comforting me with lines like, "Brother Muhan had no choice, you should understand him." I'll never forget that hypocritical face for as long as I live. With that thought, I stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the night. In this lifetime, since fate has given me a second chance, I absolutely won't make the same mistake again. Early the next morning, I went to the supply and marketing cooperative to buy some needles, thread, and fabric. Starting over means I'll need a way to make a living. Though I was raised in a well-to-do family in my past life, I've always been good with my hands. Taking on some sewing and mending work should be enough to support myself. I'd just stepped out of the supply and marketing cooperative when I ran into Shin Yuqing. She was wearing a light blue linen suit. Her hair braided into two pigtails that gave her an innocent, charming look. When she saw me, her face lit up with surprise. "Sister Yaya, what are you doing here?" In my past life, hearing her call me Sister Yaya felt endearing. Now it just makes my skin crawl. "Just getting a few things," I replied flatly, moving to step around her. "Yaya, wait." Shin Yuqing grabbed my arm. "I heard about you and Brother Muhan. Is it true?" "It's true," I said, looking at her. "Is there a problem?" Shin Yuqing froze for a moment, clearly not expecting me to answer so bluntly. "But, But Brother Muhan said it was just for work, that you two would reconcile soon, she stammered. What he says is his business, it has nothing to do with me, I said, shaking off her hand. I'm no longer Mrs. Shen Yuqing. There's no need to report these things to me. Shen Yuqing's face turned pale. Yaya, how can you say that? I only said it because I care about you. Care, I sneered. Shen Yuqing. What exactly do you care about? Whether I'll drop dead soon. The words cut deep, and Shen Yuqing immediately burst into tears. Sister Yaya, how could you say that to me? I've always thought of you as my own sister since we were little. I've never had any ill intentions toward you. A crowd began to gather around, whispering and pointing as they discussed the scene. I didn't want to get into a public confrontation with her, so I turned and walked away. Sister Yaya. Shen Yuqing cried out from behind. Are you misunderstanding something? A misunderstanding? I paused mid-step and turned to face her. Shen Yuqing, I'd rather not spell everything out, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everyone should have principles. Some things just aren't yours to take. Back in the cottage, I started organizing the fabric I'd bought. This was all material for making clothes. While the quality was nothing special, it was affordable. I planned to sew a few finished garments first, then take them to the market to see if I could make some money. I was in the middle of sewing when a knock came at the door. I thought it was Lu Qingya again, but when I opened the door, I saw Shen Muhan. He stood at the doorway, his face dark and menacing. Come in, he said, pushing the door open and stepping inside. I frowned but stepped aside to let him pass. Did you go to the supply and marketing cooperative today? He asked point blank. Yes. And you had an argument with Shen Yuqing. I set down my needlework and looked at him. Word travels fast. Linya, what exactly are you trying to achieve? Shen Muhan took 2 steps closer. Why involve innocent people in matters between us? Innocent. Shen Yuqing is innocent. I couldn't help but laugh. Shen Muhan, you actually think she's innocent? Yuqing has always looked up to you as an older sister since we were kids. How could you treat her like this? Shen Muhan frowned. She cried so much today her eyes are swollen, cried until her eyes swelled up. Ha, her acting skills are as impressive as ever, her crying is her problem. What does it have to do with me? I said coldly. Shen Muhan, we're divorced. I have no obligation to be polite to anyone. You. Shen Muhan was left speechless by my retort. Besides, I continued, since you care about her so much, why don't you just marry her? After all, you've been childhood sweethearts, you'd make a perfect match. Shen Muhan's face darkened further. What nonsense are you talking? Yuqing and I have a completely innocent relationship, there's nothing improper between us. Oh really? I looked at him with a knowing smile. Then why is it that every time she needs help, you're always the first one rushing to her side? She's the daughter of a martyr. It's only right that I look after her. The daughter of a martyr. That's quite the noble excuse. In my past life, he convinced me the same way, making me think he only took care of Shen Yuqing out of a sense of duty. And look how that turned out. Alright, you don't need to explain any of this to me. I picked up my needle and thread again. We're done. It's your business who you want to take care of. Shen Muhan watched me as I bent my head over my sewing and remained silent for a long time. Linya, you've changed, he said abruptly. Oh, I kept my head down. For better or for worse, you've become unfamiliar to me. My needle paused mid-stitch as I looked up at him. Unfamiliar is right. We were never anything but strangers. How can we be strangers after 3 years of marriage? 3 years of marriage, I scoffed coldly. Shen Muhan, have I ever truly been in your heart these past 3 years? Shen Muhan was taken aback. You leave early and come back late every day, barely making it home a few times a month. Even when you do come back, you just grab a quick meal and rush off again. When I was sick, you were in meetings. On my birthday, you were away on business. Do you even remember the last time we had a proper conversation? I poured out all these words in one breath, my heart a turmoil of mixed emotions. These were all real experiences from my past life. Back then, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough that my husband was so distant. Looking back now, it was simply that he had someone else in his heart, so naturally he had no patience for me. Shen Muhan's expression shifted repeatedly before he finally said bitterly, Yaya, I know I've wronged you all these years, but, no buts, I cut him off. Shen Muhan, we're already divorced, let bygones be bygones, you have your path to walk, and I have my own life to live. How do you plan to make a living? By doing needlework in a place like this? Shen Muhan scanned our surroundings with a frown. What's wrong with this place? It might be simple, but it's clean and tidy, and I'm perfectly comfortable here. I continued sewing without looking up. as for doing needlework, what's so bad about earning my own keep? It's better than depending on others to support me. That was clearly a dig about how I used to spend his money. Shin Muhan's expression darkened further. Linya, must you speak like this? How am I speaking? Isn't it the truth? I lifted my head to look at him. Shin Muhan, I'm a free woman now. I'll speak however I please, and it's none of your concern. Shin Muhan gave me a long, penetrating look before turning to leave. At the doorway, he paused and said, Linya, if you ever need help, you know where to find me. I didn't respond, and he didn't wait for a reply before walking away. After the door closed, I set down my needlework and let out a long, weary sigh. Speaking with Shin Muhan face to face was far more difficult than I had imagined. After all, we had loved for 3 years and hated for 3 years. Such complicated feelings aren't something you can just let go of easily, but I had to persevere, because I knew all too well that if I wavered, I would be doomed to repeat the tragedy of my past life. Over the next few days, I focused intently on my needlework. I'd sew clothes during the day and set up a stall at the night market. The earnings weren't much, but they covered my basic living expenses. More importantly, I rediscovered a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. In my previous life, after marrying Shin Muhan, I became a housewife with nothing to do but wait for him to come home, day in, day out. The monotony was driving me to depression. Even though I'm a bit tired these days, having clear goals every day has actually lifted my spirits. That evening, as soon as I returned from closing up my stall, I spotted someone sitting at my doorstep. As I got closer, I realized it was Li Ming, Shin Muhan's adjutant. Adjutant Li, I said, surprised, what brings you here so late? Li Ming quickly stood up. Sis, Comrade Lin, the chief asked me to bring you some things. He lifted several parcels at his feet. These are daily necessities, plus some money. The chief said you just moved out and might need them. I glanced at the parcels and shook my head. Thank you for coming, but I don't need these. Please take them back, Comrade Lin, please don't stand on ceremony. These things mean nothing to the chief. Li Ming grew somewhat anxious. Besides, the chief said if you don't accept them, he'll. So what happened to him? I asked curiously. Li Ming hemmed and hawed, unwilling to say more, and I didn't press him further. Lieutenant Li, please pass this message to Chief Shen. I'm doing quite well now and don't need any assistance. If he truly wishes me well, the best thing he can do is to stop disturbing me. With that, I opened the door and went inside, leaving Li Ming standing alone outside. Early the next morning, as I was getting ready to head to the market, there was another knock at the door. This time, it was Lu Qingya, accompanied by an unfamiliar middle-aged woman. Yaya, this is my good friend, Sister Wang. She heard about your situation and came especially to see you, Lu Qingya said, holding my hand. Sister Wang looked me up and down a few times, then nodded. This girl is quite pretty, just a bit too thin. I was completely baffled, having no idea what they were up to. Yaya, Aunt Wang has a nephew who's 28 this year, works at the textile mill, and has excellent character. She'd like to introduce you to, Lu Qingya said with a beaming smile. I was taken aback for a moment. Were they trying to set me up, Aunt Lu? I'm not really considering that right now, I politely declined. What do you mean you have no plans? You're a woman, you can't stay unmarried forever, Aunt Wang said bluntly. My nephew is quite a catch. He makes 42 yuan a month and owns his own place. He's more than a match for you, more than a match for me. That's really something to say, Aunt Wang. Thank you for your kindness, but I really don't need it, I said, suppressing my impatience. Why are you so stubborn, child? Lu Qingya grew impatient. Yaya, you and Muhan are already divorced. Shouldn't you start planning for your future? Plan for my future, I scoffed inwardly. Was she genuinely concerned about me, or was she afraid I'd cling to Shin Muhan? Aunt Lu, I'll handle my own affairs. There's no need for you to trouble yourself, I said politely. You impossible child. Lu Qingya stamped her foot. Never mind, Sister Wang, let's head back for now. We'll let this child think things through. After they left, I closed the door, my emotions in turmoil. Lu Qingya's rush to set me up with someone was clearly at Shin Muhan's bidding. They probably thought if I found someone new, I'd stop bothering him. Wishful thinking. I won't cling to him for the rest of my life, but not because I'm planning to marry someone else. I'm going to make my own way in this world, relying on no one but myself. That afternoon, a few unfamiliar faces showed up at the market, all of them looking like local thugs and troublemakers. They lingered around my stall for a long time before one of them finally approached me and said, "It's tough running a stall all by yourself, isn't it, little sister?" I eyed him warily. what's this about? Nothing serious, just that this is our turf. If you want to set up shop here, you'll need to pay protection money. The man held up 5 fingers, $5 a month. Not too much, right? $5 wasn't much, but I knew this was just the beginning. If I gave in today, tomorrow they'd be asking for 10, then 20. What happens if I don't pay? I asked calmly. Not pay, the man sneered. If you don't pay, you can forget about keeping your stall in one piece. With that, he reached out to overturn my stall. I immediately grabbed his wrist. Stop. With that, I walked away without looking back. Well, aren't you a feisty little thing? The man tried to break free, only to find I was stronger than he'd expected. In my past life, I'd picked up some self-defense skills to kill time, and now they were coming in handy. I'd suggest you don't mess with me, I said coldly, releasing my grip, unless you want to face the consequences. The group exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by my defiance. Fine, you've got guts, the leader pointed at me, we'll see about this. With that, they slunk away in defeat. But I knew this wasn't over yet. Sure enough, the next evening, just as I was packing up to head home, a group of men cornered me in the alley. It's the same crew from yesterday, but they'd doubled in number. Made up your mind yet, little girl? The leader grinned menacingly. Our boss says if you don't pay the protection money today, we won't go easy on you. I scanned my surroundings and realized there was no way out. The alley was narrow, flanked by high walls on both sides with exits blocked front and back. Pay up or get beat up, your choice. The man took a step closer. I tightened my grip on the scissors, ready to fight for my life. Just then, a voice came from the alley entrance. Stop. The men turned to see Shen Muhan striding over, followed by Li Ming and several soldiers. Chief Shen. The leader's face turned pale. What are you doing here? I should be asking what you're doing here. Shen Muhan's expression darkened dangerously. Harassing a woman in broad daylight. Have you no respect for the law? Chief, it's a misunderstanding. We were just discussing something with this comrade. The man wiped sweat from his forehead. Discussing? Shen Muhan sneered. Looks more like extorting protection money to me. The men exchanged uneasy glances, none daring to speak. Li Ming, take them all back for thorough interrogation. Shen Muhan commanded. Yes, sir. Li Ming immediately led the soldiers forward and subdued all the local thugs. Soon, only Shen Muhan and I remained in the alley. Are you okay? He walked up to me and looked me over from head to toe. I'm fine. I put away the scissors and brushed the dust off my clothes. Why would these people come after you? Shen Muhan furrowed his brow. Probably because they thought a woman would be an easy target, I said flatly. Shen Muhan fell silent for a moment before saying abruptly, Linya, come home with me. Home? I looked at him. Commander Shen, we're already divorced. What home are you talking about? Even though we're divorced, I can't just stand by and watch you get bullied, Shen Muhan said earnestly. It's too dangerous for a woman to be out there on her own. The danger is my concern, not yours. I picked up my things, ready to leave. Thank you for your help today, but please don't bother next time. Linya. Shen Muhan grabbed my arm. Do you have to be so stubborn? I turned to look at him. Shen Muhan, what do you mean by stubborn? I'm just living the life I want. What's so great about this kind of life? Working yourself to the bone every day, constantly worrying about safety. Shen Muhan grew agitated. If you come with me, you won't have a care in the world. Come with you. And then what? Watch you and Shen Yuqing make eyes at each other. No need. I shook off his hand. Commander Shen, save your concern. I'm not going to die. I heard Shen Muhan calling from behind me, but I didn't turn back. After returning to the cabin, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. Today's events made me realize how challenging it truly is for a woman to live independently in this day and age, but I won't compromise because of it. What hardships haven't I endured in my past life? Compared to those, what are these trivial difficulties now? Just as I was lost in thought, another knock came from the door. Thinking it was Shen Muhan again, I said impatiently, I'm not going back with you, just give it up. Ya, it's me, came Lu Qingya's voice from outside the door. I froze for a moment, then quickly opened the door. Lu Qingya stood outside, looking very upset. Mom, Aunt Lu, what brings you here so late? I invited her inside. I heard from Muhan that you ran into some trouble today. Lu Qingya held my hand, checking me over from head to toe. Are you hurt? No. Just some punks trying to extort protection money. Commander Shen arrived just in time. I replied truthfully. Ya, why put yourself through this? Lu Qingya sighed. It's so dangerous for a woman to be out there on her own. I remained silent, knowing exactly what she was about to say. Sure enough, Lu Qingya continued. Ya, I know you and Muhan have had a disagreement, but what couple doesn't argue? You're both still young. What obstacle could possibly be insurmountable, Aunt Lu? We didn't argue, we're just not compatible, I explained. Not compatible? You've been married for 3 years. If you weren't suited for each other, you would have realized it long ago, Lu Qingya said skeptically. Yaya, be honest with me. Have you heard some rumors, gossip and rumors? I looked at her and suddenly felt a strong urge to know her opinion of Shin Yuqing. Aunt Lu, what do you think of Yuqing? I asked tentatively. Yuqing. Lu Qingya paused for a moment. Yuqing is a good girl, well-behaved and sensible since she was little. I've always thought of her as my own daughter, like a daughter. So, do you think she'd make a good daughter-in-law? I continued. Lu Qingya's expression changed. Yaya, what do you mean by that? Nothing really, just asking casually. I pretended to be nonchalant. Yaya, are you suspecting something between Muhan and Yuqing? Lu Qingya frowned. How could that be? Yuqing has always seen Muhan as an older brother since they were kids. Their relationship is completely innocent. Completely innocent, I sneered inwardly. If it was truly so innocent, how could they have gotten married less than 6 months after my death in my previous life? Aunt Lu, you're right, I might be overthinking it, I agreed superficially. Lu Qingya finally breathed a sigh of relief. Yaya, please don't overthink things. Although Muhan can be a bit careless sometimes. I know he has a good heart, I know, I nodded. So when are you moving back? Lu Qingya looked at me with hopeful anticipation. Aunt Lu, I really won't be moving back. I shook my head. Shin Muhan and I are over. There's no chance of anything happening between us again. You silly child. Lu Qingya stamped her foot in frustration. How could a perfectly good marriage just end like this? I didn't respond. Quietly gathering the fabric from the table instead, seeing my resolute attitude, Lu Qingya sighed and left without another word. After she departed, I returned to the work at hand, but my mind was elsewhere, in my past life. When did Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing's relationship begin? I searched my memory carefully and finally recalled a detail. It was the autumn of 1975 when Shin Yuqing fell seriously ill and was hospitalized at the military hospital. Shin Muhan kept running to the hospital during that period, claiming he was visiting his comrade's younger sister. I was genuinely moved back then, thinking my husband was a man of loyalty and compassion. Looking back now, something must have already been going on between them at that time. Counting the time, it's summer now. That illness probably hasn't struck yet. A bold idea suddenly struck me. Since fate has given me a second chance, why not take the initiative? Rather than passively waiting for their betrayal, I should strike first. The next morning, instead of going to the market, I headed straight to the military compound. The guard at the gate recognized me. Seeing me approach, he immediately saluted and said, "Good day, ma'am." "Hello," I nodded. "Is Shin Yuqing at home?" "Comrade Yuqing, she should be in. Would you like to come inside and check?" "No need. Could you please call her for me? Just let her know I'm waiting for her at the gate." The sentry hesitated. "Well, it's fine, just tell her Linya needs to see her." About 10 minutes later, Shin Yuqing came rushing out. She was still wearing that light blue linen suit, her hair impeccably styled. "Sis Yaya," she sounded surprised. "What brings you here?" "Just wanted to chat." I looked at her. "Got a minute?" "Of course, absolutely." Shin Yuqing nodded eagerly. "Where should we talk?" "Right here is fine." I gestured toward the small garden nearby. "It's quieter over there." The two walked into the garden and found a stone bench to sit on. "Sister Yaya, did you need something?" Shin Yuqing asked cautiously. I didn't answer right away, instead carefully observing her expression. This woman, who ruined me so terribly in our past life, still pretended to be so innocent on the surface. "Yuqing, I'd like to ask you something," I began. "Go ahead. Do you have feelings for Shin Muhan?" The question was so blunt that Shin Yuqing visibly flinched. "Sis Yaya, why? Why would you ask that?" Her cheeks flushed. "Brother Muhan is like family to me." "Of course that's not the kind of affection I meant." I cut her off. "I'm talking about romantic feelings." Shin Yuqing's face turned even redder as she stammered, unable to form a coherent response. "Your expression says it all," I remarked calmly. "Sis Yaya, Shin Yuqing tried to explain. "No need to explain. There's nothing wrong with having feelings for someone," I said, looking at her. "But you should know he's a married man." "I know," Shin Yuqing replied with her head lowered. "That's why I've never acted on it." "Really?" I sneered. "Then why do you keep targeting me at every turn?" "I didn't mean anything against you." Shin Yuqing looked up hastily. "Sister Yaya, have you misunderstood something?" "Misunderstood?" I stood up, looking down at her. "Shin Yuqing, I'm warning you, stay away from Shin Muhan, otherwise, I'll make you regret it. Shin Yuqing's voice came from behind. Sister Yaya, please wait, I really didn't. I didn't look back and walked straight out of the military compound. This warning is just the beginning. Since she managed to get me killed in our past life, I'll make sure she learns how it feels to be manipulated in this one. Back in the cabin, I started carefully recalling every detail from my previous life. How exactly did that accident happen? The one that left Shin Yuqing gravely ill. I thought about it for a long time. And it finally came back to me. That's because she went to the river to do laundry and accidentally fell into the water. Since it was autumn, the river water was very cold, she caught a chill, which developed into pneumonia. It's summer now, and the river temperature is just right. Shin Yuqing, in this lifetime I'm going to give you an early taste of what it feels like to fall into water. Early the next morning, I made a special trip to the supply and marketing cooperative to buy some medicinal ingredients. They were all herbs for clearing heat and detoxifying, seemingly harmless to both humans and animals, but when combined with certain other substances, their effects become entirely different. In my past life, I spent a long time in hospitals and picked up quite a bit of medical knowledge from doctors and nurses, though not exactly professional. It was more than enough to handle someone like Shin Yuqing, a sheltered young girl who hadn't seen much of the world. In the afternoon, I went to the small river near the military compound. This river was a popular spot for military families to do their laundry. The water wasn't deep, but the current was strong. After scouting along the riverbank for a while, I quickly spotted the perfect spot. There was a particularly slippery rock there. One misstep and anyone could easily lose their footing and plunge into the water. I sprinkled a special powder on the rock before making my exit. This powder turns treacherously slick when wet, ensuring she wouldn't be able to keep her balance. And then, it was a waiting game. Sure enough, on the afternoon of the third day, I got the news. Shin Yuqing had accidentally fallen into the river while washing clothes, although she was quickly rescued. She caught a chill and is now recuperating at home. When the news reached me, I was doing some needlework. Upon hearing it, I just gave a faint smile. Shin Yuqing, this is only the beginning. That very night, Shin Muhan showed up as expected. His face was grim. The moment he stepped in, he confronted me. Linya, was it you who pushed Yuqing into the water? Me. I set down what I was doing and looked at him. Shin Muhan, have you lost your mind? How could a delicate woman like me possibly push someone into the water? You didn't push her into the water, but you might have tampered with something by the river. Shin Muhan stared at me. The day before yesterday, you went to the military compound to see Yuqing and threatened her to stay away from me. It seems Shin Yuqing is quite clever to suspect me so quickly. Threaten? I sneered. I was just kindly reminding her, as an unmarried woman, not to get too close to a married man to avoid gossip. You, Shin Muhan was left speechless by my retort. Besides, I continued, how is her falling into the river any of my business? Am I supposed to control when she goes to do laundry by the river? That made sense, and Shin Muhan couldn't find a reason to refute it. Shin Muhan, I know you care deeply about Shin Yuqing, but you can't suspect me because of that. I sighed. Even though we're divorced, I'm not that kind of malicious woman. Shin Muhan looked at me, a flicker of complex emotion in his eyes. Linya, I truly hope you had nothing to do with this. He concluded. Of course I didn't, I replied calmly. After Shin Muhan left, I went back to the task at hand, but in my mind, I was already planning the next move. Making Shin Yuqing fall ill was just the first step. Next, I'm going to make Shin Muhan see her for who she really is. A few days later, I heard Shin Yuqing's condition had worsened and she was admitted to the military hospital. Shin Shinhan visited her every day, which sparked quite a bit of gossip. The military compound was an insular community where nothing escaped public scrutiny. It was highly inappropriate for a married man to visit an unmarried woman's hospital room daily. Sensing the timing was right, I decided to pour fuel on the fire. That afternoon, I dressed deliberately in formal attire before heading to the military hospital. Shin Yuqing was staying on the third floor of the internal medicine department, and I had no trouble finding her room, through the glass in the door. I saw Shin Muhan sitting by the bedside, talking to Shin Yuqing, who was lying in bed. Both of them had gentle expressions and really looked like a couple. Sis Yaya, Shin Yuqing was clearly startled when she saw me. Shin Muhan also turned around, frowning. What are you doing here? I heard Yuqing was sick, so I came to see her. I walked to the bedside, feigning concern. How are you feeling? Any better? Thank you for your concern. Yaya, I'm feeling much better, Shin Yuqing said. sounding a bit flustered. That's good to hear. I glanced at Shin Muhan. Commander Shin is so thoughtful, coming to the hospital every day to take care of Yuqing. Shin Muhan's expression turned slightly awkward. Yuqing is the daughter of a martyr. It's my duty to look after her. Indeed, a martyr's daughter deserves care. I nodded, but some people outside aren't being very kind with their words. What are they saying? Shin Yuqing asked anxiously. Nothing much. Just that it's a bit inappropriate for a married man to visit an unmarried woman's hospital room every day, I said, feigning nonchalance. Shin Yuqing's face flushed crimson, while Shin Muhan's expression turned stormy. Some people are even saying, I added fuel to the fire, that Commander Shin divorced his ex-wife specifically to marry Yuqing. That's absolute nonsense. Shin Muhan shot to his feet. Who's spreading these vicious rumors? I've no idea who started it. But the gossip's spreading like wildfire, I said with feigned innocence. It's utterly disgraceful how they're tarnishing your reputations like this. An awkward silence fell over the hospital room. After a moment, Shin Yuqing said softly, Brother Muhan, maybe it's best if you don't come to visit me anymore. To avoid people gossiping, Yuqing, don't listen to their nonsense, Shin Muhan said, his voice tinged with emotion. Innocence needs no defense, we have nothing to be ashamed of, but... Shin Yuqing trailed off, unable to finish her thought. No buts about it, Shin Muhan insisted. I'll come when I need to come. Watching them like this, I felt a secret satisfaction. With rumors, the more you try to explain, the more suspicious you look. The more Shin Muhan insisted on visiting Shin Yuqing, the more people would suspect something was going on between them. Well, I just came to check on Yuqing. Since she's fine, I'll be going now, I said insincerely. Yuqing, focus on recovering. Don't hesitate to ask if you need anything. Thank you, Yaya, Shin Yuqing replied with a strained smile. I walked out of the hospital room in unusually high spirits. The seed had been planted, now it was just a matter of waiting for it to bear fruit. Back in the cottage, I resumed my needlework. Life goes on, and I couldn't let revenge distract me from my duties. My business has been picking up lately, and I've started to build a steady clientele. Some customers even seek me out specifically for custom orders, saying my craftsmanship surpasses that of the tailors at state-run garment factories. This gives me a real sense of accomplishment. It turns out I'm actually quite capable. I was just stuck at home before, with no chance to show it. Just as I was sewing, there came a knock at the door. I thought it was Lu Qingya again, but when I opened the door, it turned out to be a middle-aged man I'd never seen before. Excuse me. Are you Comrade Linya? The man inquired politely. Yes, that's me. And you are? I'm Old Wang, a procurement officer from the textile mill. I heard you have excellent ready-to-wear garments and would like to explore potential collaboration. The textile mill wants to work with me. This is a major client. Please, come in. I quickly ushered him inside. Old Wang walked around the room, looked at the clothes I had made, and nodded repeatedly. The craftsmanship is truly excellent. Fine. Tight stitches and superb workmanship, he said with satisfaction. Comrade Lin, our factory would like to sign a long-term contract with you. What do you think? What kind of contract? I asked with growing excitement. Our factory will supply the fabric and designs, and you'll be responsible for garment production. Old Wang presented a contract. Payment is per piece, 3 yuan per item. The more you make, the more you earn. 3 yuan per piece, that's way more than I make running my own stall. Yes, I'm willing to cooperate, I agreed without hesitation. Old Wang was delighted. He signed the contract with me on the spot and even paid a month's deposit up front. Holding that money, I felt much more secure. With a stable source of income, I no longer had to worry about making ends meet. More importantly, this proves my capabilities. I don't need to rely on anyone to live well. That evening, while calculating this month's earnings, I heard another knock at the door. This time, it was Li Ming. Comrade Lin, the chief asked me to bring you something. He was holding a package. I already said I don't need anything. I shook my head. This is different. These are some of your personal belongings. The chief said they should be returned to you, Li Ming explained. I took the package and opened it to find some of my old clothes and jewelry inside. These were all part of my dowry when I got married, so they rightfully belong to me. Thank you, I said to Li Ming. You're welcome, Li Ming replied. He started to leave but turned back and added, Comrade Lin, the chief, hasn't been in the best spirits lately. I didn't respond and simply closed the door. Is Shin Muhan in a bad mood? What's that got to do with me? He's probably busy taking care of Shin Yuqing right now. Why would he have time to worry about me? Over the next few days, Rumors about Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing spread like wildfire through the military compound. Some claimed to have seen Shin Muhan visiting Shin Yuqing's hospital room late at night, others whispered that her illness was actually a pregnancy, and there were even rumors that Shin Muhan was already preparing for their wedding. Though these were nothing but baseless rumors, they spread with such convincing details that people couldn't help but believe them. Hearing these rumors, I felt a secret satisfaction. Did they ever imagine this day would come when they were scheming behind my back then? That afternoon, Lu Qingya came by again, her face looking quite upset. "Yaya, have you heard what people are saying outside?" she asked as soon as she stepped in. "What are they saying?" I pretended not to know. "It's those rumors about Muhan and Yuqing." Lu Qingya stamped her foot anxiously. "How can people say such things? Muhan and Yuqing are completely innocent. How could they be slandered like this? That is quite excessive," I chimed in. "But with rumors, the more you try to debunk them, the more they spread. It's best to just ignore them. But if this continues, Muhan's reputation will be ruined." Lu Qingya fretted anxiously. "He's a commanding officer. How can people talk about him like this? What do you think should be done, then?" I asked. Already knowing the answer, I think Muhan should stop going to the hospital for now, and wait until this blows over, Lu Qingya said through gritted teeth. "Or, have Yuqing discharged and recuperated home? Is this really okay? Yuqing hasn't fully recovered yet." I feigned concern. "It's better than giving people something to gossip about." Lu Qingya sighed. "Yaya, do you think I'm being too harsh?" "Aunt Lu, you're doing this for everyone's benefit," I reassured her. "I'm sure Yuqing will understand too." After Lu Qingya left, I felt even more pleased with myself. Even Lu Qingya began to doubt the relationship between Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing, showing just how powerful rumors can be. Sure enough, the next day I heard that Shin Yuqing had been discharged from the hospital. Moreover, Shin Muhan stopped making frequent trips to the hospital, and the two seemed to be deliberately keeping their distance from each other. But this intentional distance only served to confirm the outside world's suspicions. People started whispering, "If they're truly innocent, why are they avoiding each other?" That evening, while I was doing chores at home, there came a frantic knocking at the door. I opened the door to find Shin Yuqing standing there, her face pale and eyes swollen. "Sis Yaya, may I come in?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. After a moment's hesitation, I let her in. "What's wrong?" I asked. Already knowing the answer, "Sister Yaya, did you spread those rumors?" Shin Yuqing asked bluntly. "What rumors?" I pretended not to understand. "It's about those rumors involving me and Brother Muhan," Shin Yuqing said emotionally. "No one but you knew that Brother Muhan often visited me at the hospital." "Yuqing, that's not quite right." I shook my head. "With so many people at the hospital, anyone could have seen him. Besides, why would I spread such things? What would I gain from it?" I don't know, but I feel." Shin Yuqing couldn't find the words to continue. "Yuqing, I understand how you're feeling right now. Being misunderstood is truly painful," I said with feigned sympathy, "but you can't let that make you suspect innocent people. But now everyone in the military compound is gossiping about us, calling me a seductress, saying I'm seducing a married man." Shin Yuqing burst into tears. What should I do? Watching her cry so pitifully, I felt no sympathy in my heart. When she ruined my life so terribly in my past life, did she ever show me any sympathy? "Yuqing, the innocent will be proven innocent, and the guilty will be proven guilty," I said calmly. "If there's really nothing between you and Shin Muhan, time will tell, but now even Aunt Lu is starting to suspect me." Shin Yuqing sobbed even harder. "She came to see me today and told me to stay away from Brother Muhan, saying it's for everyone's good." Lu Qingya really did go to see Shin Yuqing. Even better. Let them fight it out like dogs. Aunt Lu has no choice either. I continued playing the good guy. "She's only thinking about Muhan's future. But I swear I've never done anything to hurt you, Sister Yaya." Shin Yuqing grabbed my hand. "Do you believe me?" "Of course I believe you." I patted her hand gently. "Yuqing, you're a good kid. I never doubted you for a second." Hearing this, Shin Yuqing's sobs grew even more heartbroken. "Sister Yaya, you've been so kind to me, but I just..." Her words trailed off, choked with emotion. "What did you say?" I pressed. With that, I walked away without looking back. I do have feelings for Brother Muhan," Shin Yuqing finally admitted, "but I swear I never tried to seduce him. He was the one who showed me kindness first." Finally, she said it. I sneered inwardly but feigned shock on my face. "Yuqing, how could you do this?" "I know I was wrong, Yaya, but I just couldn't help how I felt." Shin Yuqing sobbed. "And Brother Muhan also." What did he do to you? I pressed further. He said he liked me, Shin Yuqing murmured, lowering her head. He said he liked her. I wasn't exactly surprised by the news, but hearing it admitted out loud still stung. When did this happen? I asked, struggling to contain my anger. When I was in the hospital, he said if he weren't already married, he would have married me. Shin Yuqing's voice grew softer with each word. In our past life. Shin Muhan had used these exact words to deceive Shin Yuqing, making her believe she was a victim of circumstance. Actually, the two of them had already been carrying on behind my back. Yaya, will you ever forgive me? Shin Yuqing asked me cautiously, her eyes filled with apprehension. Yuqing, I looked at her intently. You can't force matters of the heart. Since you have feelings for him and he feels the same way, you should go for it. Shin Yuqing was taken aback. Yaya, what are you saying? I'm just saying, I won't stand in your way, I remarked calmly. We're already divorced anyway. Whatever you two do is your own business. Sis Yaya, Shin Yuqing grabbed my hand excitedly. You really don't mind? Why would I mind? I countered. If there's no love left, why keep torturing each other? Shin Yuqing was so moved by these words that she couldn't speak. She probably thought I was genuinely helping them, never suspecting it was a trap I'd set, since she's so desperate to have Shin Muhan. I'll let her have him, then I'll make her lose him. That kind of agony cuts the deepest. Sister Yaya, you're truly the kindest person in the world. Shin Yuqing wept with emotion. I'll never forget your kindness. Kindness, I sneered inwardly. Just wait until you learn the truth. Don't come hating me with every fiber of your being. There now. No more tears. I comforted her with feigned gentleness. If you two love each other, you should be brave and stay together. But the rumors outside. Shin Yuqing voiced her concern. What do rumors matter? I declared with a wave of my hand. True gold stands the test of fire, and true love stands the test of gossip. Shin Yuqing was so fired up by my words that she was ready to rush to Shin Muhan and confess her feelings right then and there. Then, what should I do? She asked. Just do what needs to be done and let things take their natural course, I said meaningfully. Some things can't be rushed, but they also can't be put off indefinitely. Shin Yuqing nodded with a look of vague comprehension, then left in high spirits, watching her retreating figure. A sardonic smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Shin Yuqing, you thought you received my blessing, but in reality, you walked right into my trap. Now, it's time to sit back and watch the show. After Shin Yuqing left, I sat on the edge of the bed, contemplating my next move. Getting her to admit she likes Shin Muhan is just the first step. Next, I'm going to expose their relationship completely, so everyone in the military compound knows they're together. By then, Shin Muhan would have no chance to back out even if he wanted to. His reputation would be completely ruined, and his political career would suffer. Meanwhile, Shin Yuqing would become the target of public criticism and scorn. At this thought, a surge of satisfaction welled up inside me. That's exactly how they ruined me in my past life. Now it's their turn to face the consequences. Early the next morning, I made a special trip to the market and bought some fresh vegetables and meat. Then I returned to the cottage and started preparing a lavish meal. In the afternoon, I asked the neighbor's kid to deliver a message to Shin Yuqing, inviting her over for dinner. Shin Yuqing arrived shortly, her face lit up with an excited smile. Sis Yaya, what made you suddenly decide to treat me to a meal? She asked curiously. After you left yesterday, I did a lot of thinking, I said while setting the table. I feel we should have a proper talk. What about? Shin Yuqing asked, sounding slightly nervous. Let's talk about you and Muhan, I said bluntly. Since you're in love, as your friend, I should help you two out. Shin Yuqing's eyes lit up. Sister Yaya, are you really willing to help us? Of course, I said with a smile, but I have one condition. What condition? Please tell me, Shin Yuqing asked eagerly. You must follow my instructions, I said, looking at her. I'll create an opportunity for you, but you can't ask why, and you can't refuse. Shin Yuqing hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. All right, I'll do as you say. Perfect. The fish has taken the bait, let's eat first. And we can talk over the meal, I said, gesturing for her to sit down. Over dinner, I asked her numerous questions about her interactions with Shin Muhan, when she first started having feelings for him, what he had said to her, whether they had spent time alone together, and so on. Shin Yuqing was a bit shy at first, but she grew more and more animated as she spoke, eventually telling me everything. From what she said, I confirmed one thing: Shin Muhan was definitely interested in her. He talks a big game about responsibility, but his actions have already given away his true intentions. Yuqing, I have a question for you. I said, putting down my chopsticks and looking at her seriously. If you had the chance to be with Muhan, would you be willing to face the pressure from others? Yes, Shin Yuqing answered without hesitation. For love, I'm willing to endure anything, even being called a homewrecker. Someone who breaks up a family. I pressed further. Shin Yuqing's face fell. But she nodded. If this is the price I have to pay, so be it. Good, that's all I needed to hear. I smiled with satisfaction. Yuqing, be at the Riverside Pavilion tomorrow at 8 p.m. sharp. There's a surprise waiting for you. What kind of surprise? Shin Yuqing asked curiously. You'll find out when you get there, I said mysteriously. Remember, 8 o'clock sharp, don't be late. Shin Yuqing nodded excitedly in agreement. After the meal, she left in high spirits. I cleared the table and began preparing for tomorrow's plans. First, I need to write a letter to Shin Muhan, asking him to meet me at the Riverside Pavilion tomorrow at 8 p.m. to discuss something important. Then, I'll tip off the neighborhood gossips that there's going to be quite a show tomorrow night. Finally, I need to secure my alibi to avoid any suspicion. The plan is simple. Orchestrate a public encounter between Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing, ensuring everyone witnesses their intimate behavior. That way, even if they try to explain themselves, they won't be able to talk their way out of it. The next afternoon, I wrote a letter to Shin Muhan as planned and had it delivered anonymously to his office. The letter was brief. Muhan, we need to talk. Meet me at the Riverside Pavilion at 8 tonight. Don't let anyone know. Yeah. I deliberately imitated my old handwriting to make him think it was from me. Then I sought out a few neighborhood busybodies who loved to gossip and whispered mysteriously that there might be some interesting drama unfolding by the riverside tonight. Of course, I didn't spell it out clearly, just dropped some subtle hints. These women absolutely live for this kind of excitement, so there was no way they'd pass up the opportunity. With everything set up, I settled in at home to wait calmly. At 7:50 in the evening, I quietly made my way to the riverbank and hid in a nearby grove to observe. Shin Yuqing had already arrived, waiting anxiously in the small pavilion. She had clearly put effort into her appearance today, wearing a new outfit with her hair beautifully styled. It was obvious she was really looking forward to this surprise. At exactly 8 o'clock, Shin Muhan appeared. He spotted Shin Yuqing in the pavilion and visibly froze for a moment. Yuqing, what are you doing here? He asked, stepping into the pavilion with a puzzled expression. Brother Muhan. Shin Yuqing sprang to her feet excitedly. You're here. How did you know I was coming? Shin Muhan grew even more puzzled. It was arranged by Sister Yaya. She said she had a surprise for me. Shin Yuqing said happily. Brother Muhan, Sister Yaya has given us her blessing to be together. Shin Muhan's face changed dramatically. What are you talking about? Sister Yaya said she doesn't love you anymore and that we shouldn't torment each other. Shin Yuqing continued, growing more excited. Brother Muhan, we can finally be together openly. With that, she took the initiative and wrapped her arms around Shin Muhan. Shin Muhan tried to push her away, but Shin Yuqing held on tightly. Yuqing, calm down, it's not what you think. Shin Muhan attempted to explain. I am calm, Brother Muhan. Shin Yuqing lifted her head to look at him. Didn't you say you liked me? Now there's nothing standing in our way, we can be together. Just then, whispers emerged from the woods. The aunties I'd arranged to come were right on cue, hiding in the shadows and peeking. Look, they're really together. This is going to be quite a scene. The chief is actually getting involved with a young girl. How disgraceful. Carrying on like that in broad daylight, though spoken in hushed tones. The murmurs carried clearly through the still night. Both Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing overheard the remarks, their faces darkening with discomfort. Yuqing, let go. Shin Muhan urgently pushed her away. We have an audience. But it was too late. They had already seen everything they weren't supposed to. Shin Yuqing also grasped the gravity of the situation, her face turning pale. Brother Muhan, what do we do now? She asked anxiously. Shin Muhan's expression darkened ominously, as if he had just realized something. Linya, he suddenly shouted loudly. I know you're nearby, come out. I chuckled inwardly, but remained hidden in the woods without making a sound. Shin Muhan circled around the pavilion, failed to find me, and his expression grew even more grim. Let's go, we should leave this place first. He took Shin Yuqing's hand and quickly walked away from the pavilion. Those busybodies had gotten their fill of the drama and were now eagerly heading back to spread the gossip. I knew that by tomorrow, the entire military compound would be buzzing with the news of Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing's embrace. And with so many eyewitnesses this time, they wouldn't be able to talk their way out of it even if they tried. I didn't emerge from the woods until everyone was long gone. feeling particularly pleased with myself. Phase 1 of the plan was a complete success. Now we just wait and see how they handle this mess. Sure enough, the entire military compound was in an uproar first thing the next morning. News of Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing's embrace by the river spread like wildfire, with countless versions of the story making the rounds. Some say they're courting, others claim they're planning to elope, and there are even rumors that Shin Yuqing is already pregnant. In short, everyone had something to say, yet not a single soul spoke in their defense. Sitting in my cottage doing needlework, I listened to the gossip floating in from outside with particular satisfaction. In my past life they ruined my reputation, now it's their turn to taste that bitterness. At noon, Lu Qingya stormed in, fuming with rage. "Yaya, have you heard all the gossip outside?" she asked the moment she stepped through the door. "I've heard some of it." I feigned helplessness. "I never expected things to blow up like this." "What do you mean you never expected?" Lu Qingya glared at me. "Did you orchestrate this whole thing?" My heart skipped a beat, but I put on an aggrieved expression. "Aunt Lu, how could you say that about me? I'm just a helpless woman. What could I possibly have arranged?" "Last night, Yuqing said you were the one who asked her to meet by the river, and that you gave your blessing for her and Muhan to be together," Lu Qingya demanded. "Is any of that true?" "It seems Shin Yuqing has told them everything." "That's right," I admitted, "but I only meant to help them be together. I never expected so many people would witness it. Let them be together." Lu Qingya stamped her foot in frustration. "Yaya, you're being foolish. This won't do anyone any good." "Aunt Lu, please don't be angry," I said insincerely, trying to comfort her. "If they're in love, why can't they be together? What does love have to do with it?" Lu Qingya was so upset she was on the verge of tears. "Do you know the situation Muhan is in? His superiors have already started investigating him for misconduct." "Misconduct? That's a serious accusation to face in this day and age. If proven true, Shin Muhan's political career would be over for good." I felt a secret thrill, but put on a concerned face. "It's that serious. What can be done now?" "What else can we do? We have to find a way to clear their names and prove their innocence." Lu Qingya sighed. "Yaya, could you lend a hand?" "What kind of help?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You need to come forward and explain that last night was a misunderstanding. Say you asked Muhan to meet by the river to discuss reconciling, and Yuqing just happened to be passing by." Lu Qingya pleaded. "They want me to help clear their names." "Aunt Lu, is this really appropriate?" I said hesitantly. "Everyone knows Muhan and I are divorced. Wouldn't suddenly talking about reconciliation seem too abrupt?" "I can't worry about all that now. The most important thing is to protect Muhan's reputation," Lu Qingya said urgently. "Yaya, I'm begging you, please help Muhan." Watching Lu Qingya plead so desperately, my heart was filled with a tumult of conflicting emotions. In my past life, I had begged her just like this, begged her to speak up for me, begged her to believe in my innocence. And what happened? She chose to believe Shin Mingqing instead, leaving me to bear all the suffering. Now it's her turn to beg me. How the tables have turned. "Aunt Lu, it's not that I don't want to help, but doing this would damage my reputation too," I said, shaking my head. "Everyone in the military compound knows we're divorced. If I suddenly change my tune and say I want to remarry, what will people think of me? They'll say I'm fickle, that I'd stop at nothing for money." I continued. "Aunt Lu, how could you bear to let me endure that?" Lu Qingya was left speechless by my questions. She knew perfectly well I was telling the truth. If I actually went through with it, people would definitely talk. But she couldn't bear to jeopardize Shin Muhan's future. With that, I turned and walked away. "Yaya, what do you think I should do then?" she asked helplessly. "I don't know either," I sighed. "What's done is done. We'll just have to take it one step at a time." Lu Qingya left in disappointment. After she left, I continued with the work at hand, but in my mind, I was already plotting the next move. With Shin Muhan now under investigation by higher-ups, this is a perfect opportunity. I'm going to strike while the iron is hot and make sure he never recovers. Li Ming came by in the afternoon. He looked terrible, clearly worn down and haggard. "Comrade Lin, the chief would like to see you," he began. "See me?" I feigned surprise. "Isn't he swamped with work right now?" "That's exactly why he needs to see you," Li Ming pleaded. "Comrade Lin, I beg you to visit the chief. He's going through a difficult time." I thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll go see him. Since I'd have to face him sooner or later anyway, might as well get it over with now." Li Ming led me to Shin Muhan's office. Shin Muhan sat behind his desk, his expression grim and foreboding. When he saw me enter, he looked up with a complex mix of emotions flashing in his eyes. "You're here," he said. I heard you were looking for me. I sat down across from him. What's this about? You were the one who arranged what happened last night, weren't you? Shin Muhan asked bluntly. Yes, I didn't deny it. What about it? I suddenly laughed. Shin Muhan was clearly taken aback by how readily I admitted it, pausing for a moment. Why? He asked. Why would you do this? Why? I sneered. Shin Muhan, how dare you ask me why? I don't understand what you mean. Shin Muhan frowned. You really don't understand. I looked at him. Or are you just pretending not to? Shin Muhan fell silent. Shin Muhan, do you really think I know nothing? I stood up, looking down at him. Did you honestly believe your schemes were foolproof? We never did anything to wrong you, Shin Muhan argued. Really? I sneered. Then how did Shin Yuqing find out you have feelings for her? Who taught her to say all those sweet nothings? Shin Muhan's expression shifted, clearly struck by the truth in my words. Linya. I admit I have feelings for Yuqing, but I've never betrayed our marriage. He attempted to explain. Never betrayed our marriage. I laughed scornfully. Then why do you rush to the hospital every day, playing nurse? Shin Muhan was at a loss for words. Shin Muhan, you're free to have feelings for Shin Yuqing, but you can't flirt with her while pretending to maintain this marriage, I said coldly. If you love each other, have the courage to be together openly. Why all the secrecy? I never intended to be with Yuqing, Shin Muhan denied. Really? I placed a piece of paper on his desk. Then what's this? It was a note that read, Yuqing, once I've sorted everything out, we can be together. Of course I forged this, but imitating Shin Muhan's handwriting wasn't difficult. Shin Muhan stared at the note, his expression growing even more grim. I didn't write this, he said. You didn't write it, I sneered. Then who did? The handwriting is so convincing, even I was almost fooled. Shin Muhan examined the note carefully and found it did resemble his handwriting, but he was certain he had never written such words. Linya, you forged this, didn't you? He suddenly said. Forged? I pretended to be hurt. Shin Muhan, you're actually accusing me of forgery. Why would I need to do something like that? Of course you have a reason. Shin Muhan stood up. You're doing this to get back at us, at me and Yuqing. Revenge. I sneered. What would I be getting back at you for? For being in love. You just can't stand to see us happy, Shin Muhan exclaimed heatedly. You're wrong, Shin Muhan, I said, looking at him. It's not that I can't stand to see you happy, it's that I can't stand your hypocrisy. If you love each other, then be together openly and honestly. If you don't love each other anymore, then make a clean break, I continued. This half-hearted, wishy-washy way you're carrying on, it's a disservice to yourselves and to everyone else. Shin Muhan was left speechless by my words, because he knew I was right. He truly has feelings for Shin Yuqing, but can't bring himself to give up his current status and reputation. That's why he kept dragging his feet, ultimately leading to this situation. Linya, what's the use of saying all this now? He said bitterly. What's done is done. Yes, what's done is done, I nodded. So you should face the consequences. What consequences? Shin Muhan asked. You must take responsibility for your actions and pay the price, I said coldly. Shin Muhan, this is your retribution. With that, I turned and walked out of the office. Shin Muhan's voice called after me. Linya, you'll regret this. I scoffed inwardly. I would definitely not be the one with regrets. Stepping out of Shin Muhan's office, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Seeing him so overwhelmed and distressed reminded me of my own situation in a past life. Back then, I was just as helpless and desperate, but no one pitied me, let alone offered any help. Now the tables have turned, and it's their turn to get a taste of that feeling. When I returned to the cabin, I found an unfamiliar young woman sitting at the door. She appeared to be in her 20s, dressed simply with a somewhat pale complexion. Are you Comrade Linya? She asked, rising to her feet as soon as she saw me. Yes, that's me. And you are? I responded, feeling a bit puzzled. My name is Zhang Meiwan, and I work for the Municipal Party Committee's Propaganda Department. She introduced herself. I'm here today to discuss a few matters with you. The Municipal Party Committee's Propaganda Department. My heart skipped a beat. Could they be here to investigate Shin Muhan? What's this about? I pretended not to know. It's regarding some matters about Comrade Shin Muhan, Zhang Meiwan said. The higher-ups received a report about issues with his conduct. So they sent me to get the facts straight. So they really came to investigate Shin Muhan. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Please come inside to talk. I warmly invited her. After entering, I poured her a glass of water and sat down to attentively listen to her questions. Comrade Lin, what is your relationship with Comrade Shin Muhan? Zhang Meiwan took out her notebook. We were previously married, but we're now divorced. I answered truthfully, when did you get divorced? What was the reason for the divorce? This is a sensitive matter, I replied after a moment's thought. We're just not compatible personality-wise. Were there any other reasons? Jean Maywan pressed, like a third party coming between you. Perhaps, I feigned hesitation. Well, it's rather difficult to say. Comrade Lin, please answer truthfully, Jean Maywan said earnestly. This concerns the party's evaluation of Comrade Shin Muhan. I'll be straight with you, I sighed. There is indeed a third party involved. Jean Maywan perked up immediately. Who is it? Shin Yuqing, I said. A girl named Shin Yuqing. What's her relationship with Shin Muhan? On the surface, it's a relationship between an elder and a younger person, Shin Muhan said. Since she's the daughter of a martyr, he should look after her. I paused, but in reality, their relationship isn't quite right. What's not right about it? Zhang Meiwan asked while taking careful notes. Shin Muhan visits her frequently, sometimes chatting for hours on end. I pretended to be distressed, and when they're alone together, they act very intimate. Do you have any concrete evidence? I took the forged note out of the drawer. I found this by accident. It's from Shin Muhan to Shin Yuqing. Zhang Meiwan took the note and examined it carefully. What does it say? Once I've taken care of everything, we can be together. I read out word by word. Zhang Meijuan's brow furrowed even deeper. Is there any other evidence? The other night, someone spotted them embracing by the river, I added with dramatic flair. Plenty of witnesses saw it. The whole military compound is buzzing about the incident. What is your assessment of Comrade Shin Muhan's character? Zhang Meiwan inquired. I used to consider him an upright man, but now, I shook my head. A married man carrying on with an unmarried woman and secretly writing love letters behind his wife's back, that certainly raises questions about his moral integrity. After taking extensive notes, Zhang Meiwan closed her notebook and said, Comrade Lin, the information you've provided today is highly significant. We will conduct a thorough investigation. I'm just stating the facts without exaggeration. I said with feigned resignation, even though we're divorced, I still don't want to see his reputation tarnished. Your objective attitude is very helpful for our investigation. Zhang Meiwan stood up. We may contact you again if we need to clarify anything else. My door is always open, I said while walking her to the entrance. After Zhang Meiwan left, I closed the door and felt absolutely delighted. If this investigation proves true, Shin Muhan's political career is finished for good. In this day and age, misconduct is a serious charge that could lead to anything from demotion to expulsion from the party. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, and the evidence I provided was more than enough for the investigation team to draw their conclusions. The next afternoon, while I was doing some needlework, there came a frantic knocking at the door. I opened the door to find Lu Qingya standing outside with a face full of anxiety. Yaya, something terrible has happened, she exclaimed the moment she stepped inside. What is it? I pretended not to know. The municipal committee has sent someone to investigate Muhan, saying he has conduct issues. Lu Qingya stamped her foot in frustration. What are we going to do now? Let them investigate. If he's truly innocent, the inquiry will clear his name, I said calmly, but the situation is tense right now. The higher-ups are very sensitive about these matters, Lu Qingya said worriedly. If the investigation goes badly, Muhan's career will be ruined. Well, that's his own fault for not being more careful about his reputation. I continued with my work. Yaya, I heard the investigation team spoke with you, Lu Qingya suddenly asked. I nodded. Yes, they did contact me. What did you tell them? Lu Qingya asked anxiously. The truth. I looked up at her. Aunt Lu, you're not expecting me to give false testimony, are you? Not false testimony, just hoping you could put in a good word for Muhan, Lu Qingya pleaded. After all, you were married once. There must still be some affection between you. Affection, I sneered. Aunt Lu, he's already entangled with another woman. What's there to say about affection? Yaya, how did you become so cold? Lu Qingya said sadly. You weren't like this before. People change, I said calmly. After going through enough, you naturally learn to let go. Seeing my resolute attitude, Lu Qingya didn't press further and left with a sigh. She had just left when Shin Yuqing arrived. Her face was pale, eyes red and swollen. Clearly she'd been crying for a long time. Sis Yaya, did you really say those things to the investigation team? She asked the moment she stepped inside. What things? I asked, pretending not to know. They're saying my relationship with Brother Muhan is inappropriate, and that he wrote me a love letter, Shin Yuqing said agitatedly. I'm just stating the facts, I replied calmly. did I say something wrong? But that note wasn't written by Brother Muhan at all, Shin Yuqing exclaimed loudly. It wasn't him. I feigned surprise. Then who wrote it? I don't know, but I'm certain he didn't write it, Shin Yuqing insisted. Brother Muhan has never written such things to me. Is that so? I looked at her with a faint, ambiguous smile. Then there's really nothing between you two. Shin Yuqing's face flushed, and she stammered, unable to get a word out. I can tell from your expression, I sneered. Shin Yuqing, if you have feelings for each other, why won't you admit it? We do have feelings for each other, but we've never crossed the line, Shin Yuqing murmured softly. Having feelings is enough. I stood up. Shin Yuqing, you can't hide matters of the heart. You thought you were being discreet, but people saw right through you long ago. Sister Yaya, why are you treating us like this? Shin Yuqing asked through tears. How have we offended you? Offended me? I sneered. Shin Yuqing, how dare you claim you haven't offended me? I really didn't. Shin Yuqing tried to defend herself. You stole my husband, and you still say you haven't wronged me. I cut her off. Even though we're divorced now, that doesn't change the fact that he betrayed our marriage. I didn't steal him, Shin Yuqing denied urgently. You were the one who said you didn't love him anymore and told us to be together. I did say I didn't love him, but that doesn't mean I'll forgive his betrayal. I stared at her coldly. Shin Yuqing, did you really think I'd actually let you two be happy together? You're dreaming. Shin Yuqing stared at me blankly, and after a long pause, she finally said, Yaya, are you getting back at us? Getting back at you? I chuckled. You could say that. Why? Shin Yuqing asked, puzzled. Why? I walked up to her. Because I want you to understand the price of betrayal. But we truly loved each other. Shin Yuqing tried to say more. Loved each other. I cut her off. If you really did, why all the sneaking around? Why not be together openly and honestly? Because you were still Brother Muhan's wife at the time, Shin Yuqing murmured softly. So you went behind my back and schemed. I sneered. Shin Yuqing, is this what you call true love? Shin Yuqing was left speechless by my words. Now you can be together openly, I said sarcastically. Though the price is rather steep, Shin Muhan might lose his job. Sister Yaya, I beg you, please help us, Shin Yuqing pleaded as she knelt down. We know we were wrong, please forgive us. Watching her kneel on the ground, a surge of satisfaction washed over me. In my past life, I knelt before her just like this, begging her to let me go, pleading with her to stop tormenting me. And what happened? Did she show even a shred of mercy? Shin Yuqing finally learned to beg for mercy. I looked down at her condescendingly. Too late, Sister Yaya. Shin Yuqing still wanted to say something. Don't call me sister. I don't have a sister like you, I said coldly. Shin Yuqing, this is your just deserts. Shin Yuqing stared at me in despair, her eyes filled with confusion and hatred. Yaya Jia, you've changed. I don't even recognize you anymore, she said, her voice trembling. Yes, I've changed. I nodded. I'm not so easy to push around anymore. With that, I turned and walked into the inner room, leaving Shin Yuqing alone kneeling on the floor in tears. 3 days later, the investigation results came out. Shin Muhan was found to have disciplinary issues and was immediately suspended pending further investigation. When this news spread, the entire military compound was stunned. A high-ranking officer was actually suspended for misconduct. The first such case in the military district's history. Shin Yuqing was also implicated. Transferred from her current position, and assigned to teach in a remote mountainous area. Hearing this news filled me with an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. This is the price of betrayal, the retribution they deserved. That afternoon, Li Ming came to see me. He looked terrible, appearing much more haggard. Comrade Lin, the chief would like to see you one last time, he began. See me? I was taken aback. He's in the mood to see anyone right now. The chief said some things need to be said face to face. Li Ming pleaded. Just treat it as the last time. Please go see him. After thinking it over, I agreed. After all, this might be the last time I see Shin Muhan, and there were indeed things that needed to be said clearly. Li Ming brought me to Shin Muhan's residence. He was sitting in the study with a stack of documents spread out before him. When he saw me enter, he looked up, a complex mix of emotions flashing in his eyes. You're here, he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. What did you want to see me about? I asked, taking a seat across from him. I want to ask you something. Shin Muhan looked at me. Was all of this your plan? All of what? I pretended not to understand. From the divorce, to Yuqing falling into the water, to that scene by the river, and then the investigation team. Shin Muhan listed them one by one. You arranged all of this, didn't you? I neither denied nor admitted it, simply watching him in silence. Why? Shin Muhan asked. What deep-seated grudge exists between us that you'd treat me this way? Deep-seated grudge, I sneered. Shin Muhan, are you truly unaware? I don't know. Shin Muhan shook his head. I admit I had feelings for Yuqing. And I acknowledge my wavering in our marriage. But I never truly betrayed you, never betrayed me. I stood up and walked to the window. Then tell me, why did you propose that sham divorce back then? Shin Muhan fell silent. Is this because of the organization's requirement, or are you just trying to get rid of me, your burden? I turned to look at him. It's due to work requirements, Shin Muhan said quietly. My superiors require me to remain single in order to carry out special missions. Special missions, I sneered. What kind of special mission requires getting a divorce to execute? Shin Muhan fell silent. Shin Muhan, do you really think I'm that easy to fool? I walked back to face him. The fake divorce was just a pretext. Your real goal is to marry Shin Yuqing. That's not true, Shin Muhan denied. Oh really? I pulled out a piece of paper and placed it in front of him. Then what do you call this? It was a marriage application form bearing the name Shin Muhan and Shin Yuqing, of course. I forged this one too, but it looked incredibly authentic. Shin Muhan's face darkened as he stared at the application. I didn't write this, he stated. More forgeries, I sneered. Shin Muhan, you're full of excuses. Linya, I don't know why you hate me so much, but I swear I never intended to marry Yuqing, Shin Muhan said earnestly. Swear, I laughed mockingly. What's your word even worth? Linya, what's happened between us? Shin Muhan stood up and approached me. Why have you become so distant? Seeing his bewildered expression, I suddenly remembered everything from my past life. Back then, I was just as confused and helpless, but no one gave me any answers. Shin Muhan, do you want to know why? I looked at him. Then I'll tell you. Go ahead. Shin Huihan gazed at me intently. Because I've seen through your hypocrisy and your indifference, I said, enunciating each word clearly. I refuse to be a pawn in your games any longer. What pawn? I don't understand. Shin Muhan frowned. You don't understand, I sneered. Then let me ask you this. If I had refused to agree to the divorce back then, what would you have done? Shin Muhan fell silent. You're going to force me to agree, aren't you? I continued asking. Shin Muhan was at a loss for words. See, you've admitted it yourself. I shook my head. Shin Muhan, in your heart, I was never your wife. Just a disposable burden. That's not true. Linya, you've misunderstood. Shin Muhan tried to explain, misunderstanding. I cut him off. Then tell me, how much time have you truly spent with me over these past 3 years? Shin Muhan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Your heart is only filled with work, with your career. There's no place for me at all, I continued. And now, you have Shin Yuqing too, Linya. I admit I've wavered emotionally, but you've always had a place in my heart. Shin Muhan tried to salvage the situation. Me, I sneered. If I really meant anything to you, would you have fallen for another woman? Shin Muhan was rendered speechless by my question. Shin Muhan, you can't force feelings, I said, looking at him. Since you don't love me, why should I cling to you desperately? Who said I don't love you? Shin Muhan suddenly became agitated. Linya, I never said I didn't love you, you never said it, but your actions spoke for you, I said calmly. A man who truly loves his wife wouldn't develop feelings for another woman, much less subject his wife to the pain of gossip and rumors. Shin Muhan was silent for a long time before finally saying bitterly, Linya, if I could turn back time, I would never have let you suffer such grievances. Time can't be reversed. I shook my head. And even if it could, you'd still make the same choice. Why? Shin Muhan asked, perplexed. Because that's who you are, I said, looking at him. Shin Muhan, you're a selfish person. You only ever consider your own feelings and never truly think about others. I'm not. Shin Muhan tried to argue. You are. I cut him off. If you weren't selfish, you wouldn't have let me bear so much pain alone. If you weren't selfish, you wouldn't have pursued other women when you knew full well that I loved you. Shin Muhan's face darkened. Linya, I know I've made many mistakes, but please give me a chance to make things right. He pleaded. A chance, I sneered. Shin Muhan, some mistakes can never be undone. Why? Shin Muhan asked, his voice thick with frustration. Because the damage is already done, I said, meeting his gaze. Shin Muhan, do you know what it means when spilled water cannot be gathered back up? Shin Muhan fell silent. There's no future for us anymore, I said finally. Shin Muhan, I wish you and Shin Yuqing every happiness. With that, I turned and left his room. This was exactly the reaction I was hoping for. Shin Muhan's voice followed me out. Linya, I won't give up, I'll prove to you that my love for you is real. I didn't look back, because I knew that some words are easier said than done. Besides, I didn't want to give him any more chances. Stepping out of the Shin residence, I suddenly felt a sense of relief like never before. With my revenge now complete, it's time to focus on building my new life. In this lifetime, I won't compromise my own happiness for anyone. I'm going to live as my true self and embrace the extraordinary life that belongs to Linya. 3 months later, I received a letter from Shin Yuqing sent from the mountainous region. The letter was brief, containing just a few lines. Dear Yaya, I'm doing well in the mountains, the children here are all so lovely, I've come to understand many things. And now I see the wisdom in your earlier concerns. Thank you for helping me see reality clearly and understand myself better. Brother Muhan has applied for a transfer to join me here. We'll cherish each other dearly, wishing you happiness, Yuqing. After reading this letter, I smiled. Shin Yuqing has finally understood what true love means, and has also learned what it means to pay the price. And the fact that Shin Muhan chose to follow her to the mountains proves his sincerity. Though they lost their status and prospects, they found true love. In a way, it's not a bad ending. As for me, life feels fulfilling now. The textile mill's business keeps improving, and so does my income. More importantly, I've discovered my true self and no longer depend on anyone. This is the kind of life I truly want. Story 2. My twin sister caused a fatal accident while driving drunk. Without hesitation, my mother pushed me forward to take the blame. The entire family insisted that I was the one driving that day. Unable to prove my innocence, I'd ultimately died to clear my name. Reborn, I opened my eyes and found myself back to the day before the accident. 10 years ago, after my parents divorced, I was placed in the custody of my father. My twin sister Shuang went with our mother. Soon after, my mother remarried and took my sister to the United States. I stayed in China, living a tough life with my alcoholic father. It wasn't until I turned 18 that my mother and Shuang returned to China. They offered to sponsor my university education. After 10 years, our family was sitting together at dinner again. At the dinner table, my father was heavily drunk. My mother glanced at me with disdain as I wore a coat stuffed with cotton padding. Zhao, do you always live so sloppily? She asked. I lowered my head, only to see my sister's stylish leather shoes. With her legs crossed, she sarcastically remarked, Mom, do you even need to ask? It's likely that these ragged clothes are the best she can offer. 2. My mother feigned annoyance. How can you speak to your sister like that? Shuang scoffed and took a swig of red wine. My mother gently said, We came back primarily for your university matters. I timidly responded, I have a scholarship at my current university, and I also work part-time, so there's no need. Before I could finish, my father suddenly slapped the back of my head. Part-time work is useless. Your mother is willing to support you financially, and here you are babbling nonsense. So ungrateful. I lowered my head again. My mother then said gently, Zhao, I know you've had a tough time in China these past years. Don't worry, now that I'm back, I won't let you worry about money anymore. It was hard not to be moved. The motherly love I had missed for years seemed to fill the void in an instant. My heart's ice seemed to be melting. Thank you, Mom. She tenderly took out a tube of hand cream from her pocket and gently applied it to my cracked hands. It smelled of gardenias. Look at you, a girl's hands are her second face, and you don't take care of yourself. 3. In my previous life, I drowned in such tenderness. How could a child starved of love resist such overwhelming yet insincere maternal affection? After dinner, Shuang insisted on driving. I softly reminded her, You've been drinking. She rolled her eyes at me. I have a foreign ID card. Even if I get caught, they can't do much to me. My father, drunk and loud, bragged, That's my daughter Lin Jinbia's spirit, as courageous as your father. Shuang despised me, and even more so him. She coldly said, Who wants to be the daughter of a drunkard like you? Just drop dead. Insulted, my father just grinned foolishly. Our Shuang is straightforward, not like your sister. Always looking gloomy as if under a curse. After that, he kicked me. Get in the car. 4. In the car, my mom took out some documents from her bag. Shuang is planning to return to study in China next year, but she's not familiar with many of the local exams after spending so long abroad. Zhao, since you and your sister look exactly alike, I was thinking you could take the exams for her. I've already taken care of things with the examiners, you just need to show up. I knew this was illegal, and getting caught would also mean my expulsion from school. Mom. This isn't right, I said. My father shouted, what's not right about it? Is it just an exam? You're not great at anything else, but at least your studies are passable. Just this little favor, can't you help your sister? Mother also gently persuaded, yes, think of it as helping your sister. Just as I was about to take the documents, Lin Shuang slammed on the brakes. A man was struck and thrown a dozen meters away in the dark stretch of road ahead, in the cold night. Only the headlights shone brightly. A woman's scream could be heard not far away. He's been hit, he's been killed. Lin Shuang looked helplessly towards our mother. Mom, what should I do now? The next second, someone gently took my hand. The familiar scent of hand cream wafted through. Zhao Zhao, can you help your sister? Help your sister. Whether it's taking an exam or taking the blame, I am just an expendable pawn. My thoughts were abruptly pulled back. I opened my eyes and found myself back at the dinner before the car accident. Mother was gently applying hand cream for me, her tone filled with sympathy. These years have been hard on our Zhao Zhao. I felt a chill and instinctively withdrew my hand. She noticed my reaction and asked, what's wrong? I smelled the cloying scent of gardenias and suddenly felt nauseous. In my previous life, I was deceived time and again into taking the blame for Lin Shuang. Before the trial, she told me that she had reached an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family, and I would be out of jail in 3 to 5 years at most, but what awaited me was a life sentence. I repeatedly filed appeals in prison, seeking to defend myself, but it was all in vain. In the end, I had to prove my innocence with my death, ending my 18 years in such an absurd way. I looked up to see Lin Shuang downing a large glass of red wine. I calmly stood up. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. After washing my face in the restroom, I quickly calmed down and called my mother. Mom, I'm feeling a bit unwell, I'm going to head back now. Why leave now? You could just ride back with us later. I hurriedly said, it's okay, I've already called a cab. After hanging up, I went to a nearby police station. Hello, I need to reissue my ID card, just in case, like in my previous life, Lin Shuang hits someone and I take the blame again. I needed to use the identity system to confirm my alibi. The officer looked up at me. We're closed, come back tomorrow. I pleaded anxiously, a temporary ID will do, I really need it, please help me. He reluctantly turned on his computer. I'll record your information first, but you can only get it by tomorrow at the latest. I thanked him profusely, finally leaving a trace in the police system. After registering, I sat under the surveillance cameras in the lobby without leaving. Half an hour later, my mother called me in a panic. Zhao Zhao, what should we do? Shuang has had an accident. She hit someone. I looked at the caller ID and pressed the record button. What happened? Which intersection are you at? Who did she hit? Tell me everything. Clearly panicked, she told me everything. Zhao Zhao, can you help your sister? Just say you were the one who hit him. She's too timid to handle being scared like this. I reassured her. Don't worry, I'm on my way now. I'll make sure everything will be okay with Shuang. After hanging up the phone, I turned to the police officer handling the case. Hello, I'm here to report an accident. The officer looked surprised but accepted my report. When the police car arrived at the scene, Lin Shuang was hiding in her mother's arms, crying. She sobbed that it was because it was too dark and she couldn't see clearly, and accidentally hit someone. It's all that person's fault for startling me in the middle of the night. Lin Shuang always had a way of blaming others, using it as a means to escape her own culpability. A short distance away, a man lay motionless in the street. Bright red blood flowed from beneath him, spreading to my feet. The officer walked over to check, only to find that the man had stopped breathing. Has anyone called for an ambulance? The ambulance is already on its way. Upon seeing the police, the mother and daughter glared at me fiercely. Didn't we tell you not to make a big deal out of this? Why did you call the police? I feigned innocence. I don't know why the police came. It must be a coincidence. Lin Shuang pulled at my clothes. Quick, swap clothes with me, just in case they take our statements later. You say you were driving, that you hit the person. Her tone was so entitled it made me instinctively step back. Her mother gently held my shoulders, softly saying, Zhao Zhao, Mom knows you're a good girl, you'll help your sister, right? That's when I noticed that the police had been momentarily distracted. In my past life, I was the scapegoat. This time, I refused to be the fool again. Firmly, I said, no, it was you who hit him. How can I take the blame for you? They didn't expect me to refuse. My father came up and kicked me hard. You ungrateful girl, can't even help with such a small thing. I wasted my effort raising you. The kick was hard, but I was used to it. I got up from the ground, dusting myself off. Again, I repeated, I will not take the blame. I don't understand why, born to the same parents, they treat me and Lin Shuangshang so differently. My mother paused briefly, then she said, I should have considered Zhaozhao's feelings. I shouldn't have made it difficult for her. After calming down, she made a call to a lawyer friend, likely to prepare to negotiate a settlement with the victim's family. Lin Shuangshang was temporarily detained at the police station. The police found her blood alcohol level to be over the legal limit. The man she hit died, and a death notice was issued. Death by drunk driving is a serious offense. It could lead to financial ruin. In the police station, Lin Shuangshang finally realized the severity of the situation. Tears streamed down her face. Mom, you have to help me. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. The man who was hit was a migrant worker. His wife appeared simply dressed. With the loss of the family's breadwinner, she cried throughout her statement. Perhaps because of their modest appearance, everyone assumed that accepting compensation and settling was the natural course of action. The lawyer tentatively asked, how much compensation are you considering? The woman looked at us numbly. My husband is dead. How much compensation do you think I should get? It was clear that she wasn't a woman solely driven by money. My mother began to grow anxious. I'm truly sorry for the accident, and I'm willing to pay whatever amount as long as you agree to a settlement. You know my daughter is only 18, she's still young and naive. Please, let her off. Suddenly, the woman's demeanor hardened. You ask me to let her off, but who will let my husband off? A living person is gone. What do you expect me to do? The negotiation reached a deadlock. The lawyer was out of ideas and gestured us to step outside to talk. Once outside, my mother suddenly grabbed my hand. Her hand trembled slightly in the chilly night air. Zhaozhao. I looked up and saw the earnestness in her eyes, which frightened me. What is it, Mom? She reached out and touched my hair. Your hair has gotten long. Let's go get a haircut. I shivered. Lin Shuangshang had short hair. She still couldn't let go of the thought of having me take the blame for her. My father chimed in. Yes, go with your mom for a haircut. Look, your bangs are covering your eyes, he said as he forcibly dragged me to a nearby barber shop. They pushed me to get my hair cut, giving me no chance to resist. Watching in the mirror as my long hair, grown over 3 years, was being cut short, I suddenly realized that this nightmare was far from over. Even if I wasn't as foolish as in my past life to take the blame, I still couldn't escape being forced onto this path, this outcome. Sure enough, the next day my mother came to take me shopping for clothes. She bought me many things I normally wouldn't come into contact with, though they were typical for Lin Shuangshang. After shopping, she naturally steered the conversation towards Shuangshang. Mom has put a lot of effort into raising Shuangshang over the years, so it's inevitable that I might be a bit biased. Zhaozhao, can you understand? I pretended to be obedient and nodded. She sighed in relief. I've always known you're a sensible child. It's ridiculous. A sensible child is doomed to be at a disadvantage forever. That year when my parents divorced, she said the same thing to me. 10 years ago, I was more sensible than Lin Shuangshang, so I gave up the chance to study abroad to her. 10 years later, the word sensible is driving me to a dead end. The victim's family is still unwilling to settle. You and Shuangshang are twins. Could you take the blame for your sister? Mom promises to negotiate a settlement with the victim's family. If they agree, you might only serve a year or two, and you'll be out soon. I don't know what kind of mindset she had when she said that. Lin Shuangshang is her daughter, am I not? My father added, what's wrong with helping your sister? It's not like it's costing you your life. He could never know that in my past life, I paid a price as costly as my life. My mother gently said, Zhaozhao, it's different for your sister. Having a criminal record would ruin her life. You're so capable. A year or two in prison won't affect you much. The two of them, in tandem, began to brainwash me frantically. My father had even begun to pull strings with his limited connections. I knew that in this situation, resistance was futile. Even with an alibi, I would still be sent to take her place. Eventually, unable to prove my innocence, my fate would be just as tragic. After a moment of contemplation, I managed to stabilize my emotions. Mom, give me some time to think, I said. A hint of disappointment flickered across my mother's eyes, but she soon regained her gentle tone. I know this is hard for you, but we are family after all. If you help your sister today, she will remember your kindness. You two can support each other through any difficulties in the future. After all, you are twins, there's a special bond, she reassured me. Mimicking her, I forced a gentle smile. Okay, Mom, when When I got home, my dad was still ranting, "You spineless loser. Can't even help your sister with such a small favor. What's the point of raising you? Shuang Shuang is decisive like me, not indecisive like you. It's like pulling teeth to get a word out of you. I should have kept Shuang Shuang by my side from the start." He grabbed a bottle of liquor from the cupboard and took a big swig straight from the bottle, then collapsed into a deep sleep on the sofa. I went back to my room, pulled out all the savings I had accumulated, and counted them, exactly 1,000 yuan. I packed my sparse belongings into my backpack, put on a hat, and slipped out under the cover of night. Just as I was about to leave, I spotted a figure by the door that startled me. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was my grandmother. She didn't live with us, she stayed with my uncle instead. Unable to handle her alcoholic son, she often helped me in secret. "Gr grandma," I stammered as I approached her. I noticed she was holding a bowl of dumplings. "Zhao Zhao, it's the winter solstice today, at least have some dumplings before you go," she said. I wasn't sure if she had guessed something was amiss. Looking down at the dumplings, which had lost their steam, I wondered how long she had been waiting. "Have you been waiting for me?" I ventured. She smiled warmly. "They're chive and egg, your favorite." My eyes welled up with tears. Grandma carefully picked a still warm dumpling from under the bowl and brought it to my lips, babbling, "I blanched the chives earlier, and the eggs are fresh from this morning. It's delicious, Grandma," I managed to say. She didn't ask why I was carrying a backpack or where I was going. Under the dim streetlight of the narrow alley, I pulled out 200 yuan and handed it to her. "Keep this money for some treats," she chided me gently. "I don't need money, keep it for yourself," and pushed it back into my pocket. Glancing at my watch, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. With a heavy heart, I turned and walked away. From behind me, Grandma suddenly said, "Dumplings when you board, noodles when you alight. Remember to eat." I plunged into the night, not looking back, and headed for the long-distance bus station. I bought a ticket for the next departing bus, planning to settle down somewhere for a while. Reaching into my pocket, I found a small cloth pouch. Untying the string, I discovered it was 2,000 yuan. Grandma had slipped it in when I wasn't looking. She knew everything and was helping me. After a 5-hour ride, I had left my hometown far behind. Upon arriving, I stopped at a small noodle shop by the roadside for a meal. Then, I snapped my SIM card in half and threw it away. This was a small coastal town, mostly inhabited by fishermen. I found a job at a seafood supermarket. Seeing my destitute state, the owner kindly cleared out a storage room for me to use as a dormitory. Thus, I lived in the coastal city for 2 months. With the money I brought from home and some funds from my grandmother, life wasn't too bad. I knew that during those 2 months, my parents must have been frantically searching for me. I also knew that returning home would inevitably lead to a harsh punishment, but I understood that this was the only chance I had to fight for myself. 2 months later, I saw on the news that Lin Shuangshuang's case was finally coming to judgment, due to the negative impact and the fact that she was a foreigner. Both social and mainstream media were extensively covering the story for views. The case quickly became a hot topic, indirectly speeding up the judgment process. 18-year-old foreign girl drives drunk and kills, shows no remorse after confessing. Defense attorney attempts to use foreign laws for her defense. Is this contempt of court? The victim's family refuses to reconcile, vows to fight to the end. Each headline was enough to make a special report. Lin Shuangshuang's mishap became a media frenzy, exactly what I wanted to see. I watched the online reports indifferently. She deserved her fate. On the day of the verdict, it started drizzling in the seaside city where I was. The owner and a fellow villager were discussing enthusiastically, "That young girl got 12 years, she'll be 30 by the time she's out. Yeah, such a waste of her youth, spent in prison." Suddenly, they paused. "Zhao Zhao, I saw the news photo. That girl looks a bit like you." The news photo was pixelated, but the lower half of the face shown looked exactly like mine. I just smiled and firmly denied it. "You must be mistaken, we look nothing alike." The owner seemed thoughtful and then added, "Maybe my eyesight is failing me. I also thought I saw a missing person notice with a girl who looks a lot like you." The missing person notice must have been from my parents. These 2 months, they had used countless connections in an attempt to find my whereabouts. Their sole purpose was to have me take the blame. If my whereabouts were discovered, my fate would be the same as in my previous life. But now, I was no longer afraid, because the judgment had been made. Lin Shuangshuang going to prison was a done deal. So, I packed my bags and bought a ticket back home. Upon arriving home and showing my face, my father rushed up and slapped me hard. "You really have the nerve, running away from home without a word. You might as well never come back if you're so capable." My grandmother tried to stop him but was pushed to the ground. "You old hag. Who are you to interfere with how I discipline my daughter?" My father raised his hand to hit me again, but I firmly grabbed his wrist. He had Parkinson's from years of drinking, and I was already stronger than him. "That slap just now repays your parental kindness. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other." I helped my grandmother up, and she clung tightly to my hand, shielding me behind her. In that moment, I suddenly felt empowered. My father tried to hit me again, but fortunately, my uncle arrived in time and pulled him away. I went inside and packed up the things I hadn't taken before. I had already informed the school in advance and was preparing to move back into the dormitory. Before leaving, I reassured my grandmother repeatedly that I would come back to repay her once I graduated and earned money. She just smiled and told me to be careful. After returning to school, I bought a new SIM card. Since school hadn't started yet, both the academic buildings and dormitory areas were deserted. On the third day after my return, my mother came to see me. The first thing she said was, "Lin Zhao Zhao, I didn't expect you to be so heartless. I learned it from you." I replied, "In my previous life, she treated me ruthlessly, and because I clung to the warmth of maternal love, I paid with my life. I remember everything vividly. Now are you satisfied? Your sister is in prison, her life is ruined." She brought it upon herself. Her gaze towards me turned even colder. I would no longer incessantly question her about why she treated my sister and me differently, nor would I continue to suffer in silence. Human nature is a complex thing. Parents are supposed to be the closest people to you in this world, but you can never truly understand what's going on in their minds. At this moment, however, I knew what my mother needed most. "Mom, we can sit down and have a proper talk. There's no need for confrontation." She dropped the pretense. "What do you want to talk about?" There was a quiet coffee shop next to the school. We sat down and ordered 2 cups of coffee. I took out a document I had printed earlier from my backpack and slid it across the table to her. After my mother took Shuang abroad 10 years ago, she established an educational institution overseas using the Chinese exam-oriented education model and made a fortune. This made their life abroad very comfortable. Unfortunately, there was a flaw. Lin Shuang's academic performance was poor. Despite many years overseas, both her spoken language and grades were a mess. As her daughter reached adulthood and failed to secure admission to a prestigious university, she thought of me. She wanted me to take exams in place of Shuang to secure her a spot at a top university, to promote her educational business. "I look just like my sister, and we are both your daughters. You just want a living billboard for your education brand, and I can help you." Over the years, I had studied hard, hoping that one day my mother would come back for me and take me abroad, but that hope was dashed. However, in another place, I found a new beginning. Seeing her expression, I knew she was wavering. Perhaps fundamentally speaking, my sister and I are not as important to her as her career, so by targeting her interests, I had a bargaining chip in the negotiations. "Give up on Shuang. Take me abroad, and I promise to be your perfect daughter." A look of surprise appeared on her face. "This is your sister. How can you say such things?" I saw guilt in her eyes. Confidently, I said, "People aim for higher grounds, and I believe you will make the right choice." After Lin Shuang was imprisoned, she was still trying to pull strings everywhere, hoping to reduce the sentence through continuous appeals. She invested a lot of time and money, although the lawyer had gently reminded her the verdict was final, and appealing it wouldn't make much of a difference. I took a sip of coffee and started speaking leisurely. "When you had to choose between me and Shuang, you chose her because she seemed clever and more to your liking. Back when custody was being decided, she chose my seemingly smarter sister, and I, who was only good at hitting the books, appeared dull and was not good at expressing myself, so she concluded that I wouldn't amount to much, but time would prove who was more outstanding." My mother seemed embarrassed, as if I had seen through her. She quickly said, "Let me think about it." After saying that, she left. A week later, she sent me a document containing all the materials needed to go abroad. My purpose was achieved, so I immediately began to prepare. To gather the materials, I returned to my place of household registration. During this trip, I took the opportunity to visit Lin Shuang in prison. She had been serving her sentence for over a month, wearing a blue and white striped shirt, her hair cut short to ear length. When she saw me, she screamed at me frantically. Questioning why I hadn't taken the blame for her, I picked up the receiver and told her. What goes around comes around. Lin Xuanxuan glared at me with red eyes. My dear sister, she probably forgot that it was the same 10 years ago. We sat facing each other, and she knelt on the ground crying, begging me. She said, "Sister, I can't stand Dad's temper. I want to go abroad with Mom. Please help me." Lin Xuanxuan had always been rebellious, so she was punished more than I was. I, on the other hand, was more tolerant and indeed could endure our father's temper better, back then. I looked at the scars on her arms with a heartache. It was the most regrettable step back I took in my life. "Sister, I've already helped you once, so you must bear the consequences this time." Lin Xuanxuan held in despair. She had grown accustomed to a life of freedom. The transition from heaven to hell must have been unbearable for her, but today's outcome was shaped by her own character. I thought she would restrain herself after moving abroad, but 10 years have passed. And she's only become worse. "Sister, I forgot to tell you, Mom has decided to take me abroad. I will enjoy everything abroad for you." From 18 to 30 years old, the prime years of life, I have plenty of time to plan my life, while she can only choose to stay in prison, and even after being released, she'll just be an ex-convict. Life is swapped, just like that. After sorting out all the materials needed to go abroad, I went home to visit Grandma. She seemed to have expected my return. Waiting for me at the entrance of the village, I gave her all the money I had saved during this period. "Grandma, I'm about to go abroad. I'll come back as soon as I'm capable of making money." Her eyes were kind, and her aged hands gently stroked the hair by my temples. "Zhao Zhao, Grandma hopes you have a bright future." Having been through so much, I thought I had become heartless, but hearing those words, tears still uncontrollably fell. Grandma pushed me gently forward, urging me, "Go ahead. Your father will be back soon. Don't worry about Grandma, just go pursue your future." Suddenly, a scene from a past life flashed in my mind. To prove my innocence, I chose suicide. After my death, only Grandma, staggering, came to the prison to claim my body. She knelt beside the white cloth, sobbing softly, muttering repeatedly, "My Zhao Zhao had a hard life." I also heard her prayers. "If only I could have another life. Dear God, please have mercy and give my granddaughter a way out." The scene flashed back, and looking at my white-haired grandma in front of me, she seemed to have aged many years. The only thing unchanged was her gaze, still so tender and soft. In the chilly wind, she stuffed a thermal container into my hands. "Take some food for the road, and don't look back. The road I came by is behind me. All I can do is look forward." I turn away resolutely and leave, yet, even from a distance, when I turn back, I can still see her hesitating in the cold wind. I know what's inside the thermos: dumplings for the ride there, noodles for the ride back, filled with chives and egg. I brought all the ingredients with me when I followed my mother to the United States. Here, I've experienced everything: luxurious, upscale living conditions, excellent education, and endless opportunities. I didn't let her down. Getting accepted into several Ivy League schools, her educational institution gained a great reputation because of this, attracting many parents every day. I was displayed like a zoo monkey, over and over again, but here, they all call me Xuan Xuan. I don't care about the name, I respond with a smile to everyone. My mother now had an excellent daughter, and her attitude towards me changed 180 degrees, gentle and kind, even allowing me to do many things unconditionally. "I should have taken you abroad earlier. You are indeed better than Xuan Xuan, and easier to control." Hearing this, I just smiled. I complimented, "Of course, it's all thanks to Mom's great teaching. My mother will never know that my excellence was earned through countless days and nights in my home country, with an abusive alcoholic father and a filthy living environment. It taught me a lesson: if I didn't excel academically, I'd have no future, so I forced myself to become better." Seizing the opportunity when it came, to outsiders, we appeared as a model mother-daughter duo. Yet sometimes, my mother would feel nostalgic. "Zhao Zhao, why do I always feel you're not as close to me as Xuan Xuan?" I flashed a sweet smile. "How could that be? The person I love most in this world is Mommy." After saying it, I even found it funny myself. How could someone who has died once love their executioner? Perhaps my mother should understand. We've become the same type of person deep down, so as long as there are no conflicts of interest, I will always be her good daughter. After finishing my master's abroad, I had saved enough to become independent from my mother. When job searching, she insisted I stay in the U.S. I refused. She looked at me incredulously, as this was the first time I had ever defied her. "There are many good job opportunities abroad. And the conditions are much better than at home, why won't you stay? I missed my grandmother. Over the years, I could only visit her during holidays. She was getting older and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's last year. My father and uncle were constantly arguing over who should take care of her. Now I have the capability to be with her in her old age, so I must return home. My mother tried to stop me repeatedly. She didn't want to lose a well-groomed daughter. I coldly said, "These years. You've also made a lot of money off me, enough for me to repay you. From now on, we'll go our separate ways and no longer interact." She had the same shocked expression she had years ago in the coffee shop, shocked by my coldness, shocked by my calculation. I understand she doesn't truly love me, she loves the benefits this body brings. Now that the benefits are settled, we owe each other nothing. Persisting, I returned home. Grandma's condition wasn't good, she hardly recognized anyone anymore, but when she saw me, she still smiled warmly and called me Zhao Zhao. I leaned next to her, hiding behind her frail body like I did countless times from my father's beatings as a child. She shielded me with her small frame. I grew up under her protection. Now it's my turn to protect her. After returning to my home country, I successfully landed a high-paying job. With absolute financial independence, my father no longer dared to shout at me. In fact, when he needed money, he would approach me with a servile smile. I found a quiet place for my grandmother to spend her old age, where the spring sun was at its best. Together, we would lie in the courtyard basking in the sun. She didn't remember much about the past anymore, only occasionally would she mention something from my childhood. One morning, she woke up from a dream, her eyes were bright and her mind was clear as she called me to her side. "Zhao Zhao, Grandma had a dream that you died." I held her hand tightly. "It was just a dream. Aren't I right here with you?" She smiled with relief, closed her eyes, and said slowly, "Grandma is really happy." That year, I prayed in the temple for 7 days and nights. The Buddha saw my sincerity and fulfilled my wish. Now, I desire nothing more in this life than to see you thrive. I felt a vague sense of unease. It had been a long time since Grandma had spoken such coherent long sentences after falling ill. I panicked. "Don't sleep yet. I still have so much to tell you." She opened her eyes, filled with contentment. "Grandma is tired. The rest of the journey you must walk alone. Grandma believes you will do well." After she said this, I felt her hand suddenly loosen. Death is like a persistent drizzle. There's no need for an umbrella, but the endless dampness permeates every corner of life. I wept bitterly in such dampness. After composing myself, I took care of her final affairs. After the cremation, I set up a lamp for her in the nearby temple to guide her rebirth. The monk recognized me. "Are you Zhao Zhao?" I was surprised. I had never been to this temple before. Today was my first visit. The head monk uttered "Amitabha." "Your grandmother often came to our temple, carrying your photo, sometimes kneeling in the hall all day. I have never seen such a devout believer. Your grandmother must have loved you very much." I stood there, stunned. During the years I was abroad, she would come to the temple whenever she could to pray for my well-being, hoping that Buddha would bless my future. As the golden light appeared before Buddha, a strange memory suddenly flashed through my mind. It was a memory from after I died in a past life. Upon hearing of my death, my grandmother wept daily. She knelt before Buddha for many days, begging for a chance for me to have a redo. She said, "My Zhao Zhao has had a hard life, never lived a good day, and can't just leave like this without clarity." My grandmother gave me a chance to choose my fate again. And indeed, I got what I wished for, the opportunity to choose again. The day I was forced to take the blame and decided to flee was on the winter solstice. Grandma knew I was leaving, so she waited at the door. The bowl of cold dumplings in her arms was proof that she had always been protecting me. Every time she pushed me forward, she was pushing me towards a better ending. She always told me to strive for a better future. It turns out she was afraid I would repeat past mistakes, and this time, I chose the best path for myself.